So let's start by talking a little bit about Tortilla Española. Yeah, you guys want to hear what a Tortilla Española is? I'm assuming everybody who's cooking, who's actually out there with their ingredients in front of them, has had Tortilla Española before. From my estimation, I would say it's the most popular national dish of Spain. You could argue that paella is maybe more well known in the U.S. Chat and Becca are on. Hi guys. Look, and they're already muted and good to go. They're experts. So the thing about Tortilla Española is it is everywhere. It is incredibly ubiquitous in Spain. There are a lot of different ways that people make it, but generally follows the same basic core. That basic core is that it is eggs and potatoes. I think it was originally, the first record of it is around the 1800s, and it has evolved over time. Regionally, they make it a little bit different. Some make it thicker, some make it thinner, different slice variations on the potatoes. Some people add Serrano ham to it, or chorizo. The onion is probably the most controversial add-in. Some people say, no way, and other people swear by it. I like the flavor of the onion, so I'm going to be making it with an onion, but you can choose not to, and you could add in any of those other things. So let's talk about the things that you're going to need to cook with me. You need eggs. So the pastured egg, as Eric up on the farm there will tell you, these are from Happy Chickens. And when you go to the store and you see something that says free range or organic, it's not the same thing. This is from a chicken that was able to, free range could mean that they're in a pen and that they're just not cooped up in a little cage like this. So cage free. Noah's showing you pasture raised right there. We shop in the same place, obviously. Pasture raised also means that the chickens are able to eat stuff beyond just some sort of feed that they're given. And a lot of the supermarket eggs that we get have pale yellow yolks, and their albumin, the white part, is not hefty because they're not eating a diet of natural things around them. So, you hear a lot about the deep orange yolks that come from a pastured egg, and it's because they're eating things like grubs and other wild things that they're picking up, and it gives them a much richer diet and a much deeper color in the egg. So to me, I won't make a tortilla or almost anything without using pastured eggs. It's worth the extra price. It costs, sometimes Vital Farms has really brought the price down. It's a collective of farms, and theirs are, and I don't get paid to say that, but theirs are about $6 a dozen, $7 a dozen.
How do you feel about duck eggs?
Duck eggs would be okay, but I feel like they have more of an earthy, gamey taste to them. So if you're into that, sure, it would work. Same concept. So it's definitely worth the spend on these. Local farmers, you're probably going to wind up spending about $10 a dozen on them, but it makes all the difference in the world. As for potatoes, so waxy ones will hold up a little bit better to the cooking process. Starchy potatoes work well though. So Yukon Gold is sort of the gold standard. They have different names in Europe. Also, these banana fingerlings are really solid for this. I'll probably use the Yukon Gold just for ease, but you can use a Russet, and there's really no difference in the cooking. The main thing I think to consider is the shape. So when we start cutting these, I'm going to give you options for the shape of it. Some people will take and slice it thin on a mandolin. They really like thin slices. I prefer to do sort of medium size off form. I don't want them to be standardized chunks. Other people will literally cube it and dice it up. You could do any one of those today. The only thing you're going to change when you're cooking it is the cooking time, so that you get a tender potato. So when we get down to the cutting part of it, you'll make a decision. One other thing you could consider is Ferran Adria, who is one of the most celebrated chefs in the world from Spain, has a recipe to make a Tortilla Española with Lay's potato chips. And I gotta tell you, it's the real deal. It's no joke, and it's delicious. So if you're looking for a quick way to do this, you skip the whole potato part and sauteing them. You put the potato chips right in the egg, and you soak them for a little while, and then you go right to the frying part of the tortilla itself. And once you get good at this, I recommend trying it. It's a different flavor. As far as onions, a standard yellow or sweet onion will work. And I'll show you the different biases that you can cut it on to get different effects. The other thing is olive oil. I'm not using a high-end olive oil here because we're going to be really submerging the whole thing. It would get really expensive. And you're picking up some of the flavor, but it's more of a cooking vehicle, and you're almost poaching the potato in the olive oil. And then when I'm done, I will strain it back into a plastic container like this so I can use it again because it gets a lot of flavor from the onions. Salt. I'm going to salt the eggs with a diamond sea salt. This I use for almost all cooking purposes. But if I want to put some finished salt on top of it, then we're looking at using Malden, which is a much more flaky salt. And then, of course, fresh cracked pepper. Now, we're going to make sure you have a couple of bowls, or at least one substantial bowl. I didn't put it in the description, but a fine mesh strainer is going to be really helpful. So if you don't have that, like everybody's running to get theirs. That's cute. I have two types of spatulas here. You can use either one. You can use both. It just depends on what winds up in the pan. So I've got a nice soft rubber traditional spatula, and then more of a baking spatula. Of course, a sharp knife. And then this is probably one of the most important things. So this is a wire rack for cooling afterwards when it's done. I happened to come across this when I got a pizza oven, an uni pizza oven, and this is a metal pizza peel. And I use this because when you do the flip for the tortilla, you want to have a surface that covers the pan, and then you can transfer it. So you want to have something that's flat. You can use a plate, you can use a cutting board. So before I got this, because this little tiny thing is perfect, but I used to use a plastic cutting board like this. So this would work fine if you have something flat and light, because what's going to happen is you're going to have to turn it with one hand, and then you're going to put the pan back down and slide the omelet back into it. So you need something that's thin and flat, and that's the key technique factor here. Everything else is pretty easy. So I'll give you a second to go get that if you don't. I'll talk about the size of the frying pan. Tortilla, as I said, some people make them thick. Some people will make them super, super high. I usually go just up to the lip of a pan like this, but as you saw in one of the pictures on Facebook, I've used this before as well. This would get you a much thicker tortilla to serve big groups, which I'm often doing. So using a cast iron pan would work. The flip's a little bit harder in there, so if you're using a cast iron pan, you might just put it in the broiler and finish it in the broiler rather than doing the flip. But we're gonna do the flip here. On live TV. So pan size. This is a 6-inch, this is an 8-inch, this is a 9-inch. I'm probably going to cook in the 8-inch. I think that that's a good size for what we're doing here, but you could do any one of these depending on what pans you have. You could start in a smaller pan, and then when you do the flip, because it gets a little messy, you could finish it in the larger pan, and then you just sort of tuck the edges underneath. So when we get to that, you'll see. So let's start. I'm going to move all this away. Let's start by getting our potatoes out. So I'm going to use, I think, 3 fairly large Yukon Gold potatoes, and I'm going to take one of my bowls. If you're using multiple bowls, cool. We can use the same bowl throughout, but I'm going to put some water in it. Enough that it's going to be able to cover the potatoes once you peel them, because you don't want the potatoes to start browning on you. So take your bowl, put enough water to cover the potatoes so that when you peel them, you'll arrest the browning process. Everybody seems to be still with me. And you want a peeler. So if you've got a vegetable peeler, and for those of us in California, you want to have your compost handy. So we're going to peel our potatoes, and as soon as we peel our potatoes, we're going to then put them right into the water. And this should go pretty quickly. And I can rest my voice for a second. How about that COVID, huh? Okay, so that's one. I like these. It's a good yellow color on the potato. It's going to add some good flavor. We have if you're in San Francisco, there is a vendor at the farmer's market on Saturdays at the Ferry Building that pretty much just sells potatoes. I forget the name of the guy or the girl, but they have the most beautiful potatoes, and they have varieties that come from all over the world that I don't know the specific names of, which is a good thing. They're constantly surprising me. I'll go in there and I'll say, look, I'm making this or that. Can you suggest a potato? And these are, right from the dirt the day before. Fantastic varieties, great flavors. I find when I travel in Europe that that's one of the things that I think is the most noticeable about the difference in produce, and that's the quality of potatoes in Europe. The flavor is beyond. Same thing with the eggs. It'd be hard to find a crappy colored egg in Europe. They almost always use pastured eggs. But the potatoes there have a super potatoy flavor to them. Okay, so has everybody got their potatoes peeled? You guys are all faster than me? Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to move to the onion, because as soon as we chop the potatoes, we want to have the onion ready, because the onion will also act as an agent to arrest the browning of the potatoes. So rather than put the cut potatoes back in water to keep them from browning, we'll have the onion ready and we'll mix them together, and that will prevent the browning, so that we don't have to soak them in water. Okay, so onions. I like to do, there's a basic technique that I've learned in restaurants where you start by cutting off this part of the bottom, the part that would have been attached to some sort of a stem, and then half it from this part down, and then you peel the small layer off the skin here. You can go one layer down, so this is what you want to be left with. I'm probably going to use the whole onion. You can decide for yourself proportion-wise as we go through this, but I would chop up a whole onion. Okay, so a couple different ways you can do this. If you cut an onion on this axis, if you can see it, you always cut from the cut side where you cut off the stem down, so that you have a place at the end that anchors it, right? So if you were to just cut across like this, you would get nice slivers, and they would cook down softer. They would, and some people will cut across like this and then cut down. So you can do that if that's your technique. For a tortilla española, I actually prefer the onions to have a little bit more strength to them, and to get that, you would then cut off this end and cut them on the bias. And cutting them on the bias like that keeps their structural integrity a little stronger. So it won't melt down and be as squishy as an onion if I were to cut it like this. So I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to go in at an angle like this, and it's going to give me some nice sized slivers that will integrate well And then when you get to the last section, you kind of turn it there. Okay, so this will give me nice sized slivers, and because I'm cutting it on that bias, they're going to hold their structure a little bit better. Can't touch my face, and only because I'm cutting onions. Okay. So get your onion together. And then what we're going to do is, everybody let me know when you're done your onion. Put your hand up. We're going to have a competition, like a Top Chef mise en place competition. There's Nicole. I didn't see you before. Hi, Nick. We got the Midwest here. We got the East Coast and the West Coast. Becca, did you see Nicole's there? Yep. There you go.
Except my onion is like brown. Because I'm in the Midwest and not in San Francisco.
All right, everybody got their onions done? All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump the water out of the potatoes. We've kept them from browning, and then we're going to move pretty quickly. All right. I'm going to dry it off, and I'm going to wipe out the bowl too. That's the one thing I didn't tell you is always have a dish towel around. Okay. You don't want moisture in there. So, as I said, different sized, we can put the onions in the bowl. Different sized potato slices for different folks. I'm going to do it where I take the potato and I half it, and then I'm going to do fairly irregular slices like this. Okay? So I'm going for like that. That's my ideal Tortilla Española slice, right? Some people prefer to cube it, chop it into bigger slices, or get really thin. Okay? This is your preference. I'm not going to judge you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop up all of my potatoes into, and you can see I'm kind of turning my knife as I do it so that I get a tapered tip. I like potatoes. I do this for my home fries too, that are thicker on one side and then are thinner on the other. You see how that goes? That's just a personal preference. I like the way it texturally shows out. It'll get a little bit lost in a Tortilla Española, but I know it's there. So that's how I cut my potato slices. So you want to cut up all your potatoes into your slice. Show me what you're doing. Is everybody doing the same thing, or is anybody doing something different? Yeah. Has anybody made a Tortilla Española? Raise your hand if you've made one before. None of you. Wow. Okay. Yes, and I have an answer.
Did you put the onions in water or just in a bowl?
No, I emptied out the bowl, and the onions are just sitting right here,
Okay.
waiting for the potatoes. So as I cut the potatoes, I'm going to put them in with the onion. You're going to have some shrinkage when you cook them. So as you're eyeballing this, you're gonna see that the potatoes and the onions will get a little bit smaller. So as we prepare the amount of egg, and I always find that you wind up using a little less egg than you thought you would. You would think for a dish of this size. So as you put the potatoes in, mix them in with the onions so that it arrests the browning. Okay? And you can see this short period of time that I've had the potato out of the water, it already starts to brown a little bit. So you kind of have to act fast to make sure that you avoid the browning. It's not going to kill the potatoes if they get brown, but aesthetically, I like the whole thing to look nice and yellow. Best tortilla I ever had was surprisingly, and I think I just saw that, yeah, Juliana's on this call. I don't know if she's still watching, but I believe you were there, where I pulled into a gas station in the Basque region, and I was getting gas, and the owner of the gas station was an old lady who had just taken a Tortilla Española out of the pan and put it out on the counter. It was like a little convenience store in a gas station. And my God, like in the strangest of places, you come across brilliance in Europe. But that was the best Tortilla Española I've ever had. If you're looking for a good one in San Francisco, I would say that Bellota is your place. Bellota has it's almost like little mini individual ones in a little cast iron pan that they serve up, and it's quite good. They also have jamón ibérico there, which is the real deal ham. So what I would do, guys, is look at your potato to onion mixture to determine how far you go with your potatoes. I would say, and look at your pan to see if you think that you're going to overload your pan. That's a consideration. Like, I'm getting to a place, I think I chose the 6-inch pan, where that's gonna inundate the pan. So I'm probably either gonna scale up into a larger pan, or I can make 2 of them. I'm gonna go with all the potatoes though. Maybe I'll save some and make 2.
I have a question.
I can.
But do I have to use a nonstick pan because I'm gonna have the same problem? I don't have a bigger nonstick. A really big nonstick, but.
I would just use the smaller pan and scale back and make a second one, or make some, home fries with whatever you have left over. Or just chop up what you need, stop chopping. You get a feel for your pans. And if you only have one nonstick pan, ideally, unless you're using cast iron, you want to use nonstick. I guess the exception to that rule would be if you decide to broil it. But it's going to be really hard to get out of the pan if it's not nonstick. I don't know what they did in the 1800s, though, because I'm thinking Teflon wasn't a thing back then. So, all right, going one more here. And then we're going to start cooking. How are you guys doing on your potatoes? Okay, I will wait for the group. Has anybody done a live cooking demo before?
No.
Participated. I think it's a pretty cool concept. I was actually thinking that I could set up a Twitch channel and do this fairly regularly and get paid for it, but depends on what happens with this economy.
Are you asking for reviews when we're all done?
What's that?
Are you asking for reviews when we're all done?
No, definitely don't want reviews. I'd be afraid of the outcome. Okay, so my potato to onion mixture. This is what we're looking at right now. You're gonna want to have something similar. Looking good, Noah? Looking good, Eric? I don't see everybody on my screen, so some of you might be holding it up and I'm not seeing it. Let me scroll over. Nug, looking good. Nick, looking good. Okay. We're all waiting on you, Becca Dodd.
I've been having potato envy.
Okay. So you'll notice, I'm just getting some water. You'll notice that your potatoes shouldn't be browning mixed in with the onions. This is true of my latke recipe as well. At some point, maybe I'll share my latke recipe, but once you get them in with the onions, there's something that happens. All right, so I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with my larger pan, just because I made a little extra. I might actually use my largest pan because I made some extra, and then I'll scale it back as we get in. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start sauteing our potatoes and onions. You wanna put it on sort of a medium heat, medium to high-ish, and you're gonna start off with a little bit of olive oil just to get it going, and then I'm actually gonna take the top off of this because you're gonna get aggressive with the olive oil. So you probably wanna put about 1/4 of an inch in the pan, and then get your potatoes and onions in there, and then you're gonna add more olive oil to essentially
1/4 of an inch?
at least. And then you're gonna go more. Like I said, you're poaching it. You're not gonna be eating this oil. It's like French fries. You're doing a very slow deep fry of these. And then you're gonna take and fill in oil. I mean, I'm putting in probably 1.5 cups here, Danielle. No joke.
And what's your heat at?
Medium to high. So what's going to happen is, I don't have to cover them right now, but get it up there, and then as they start to cook, they'll settle down into it. I'm going to have, I didn't have this on my list, but a wooden spatula. And then I'm going to put my bowl aside because we're going to put our eggs in that bowl.
So, am I right that you just, the pan's not hot yet, you just put everything in and then heat
Yeah.
together?
Yeah. So it's going to heat, it's all going to come up together. And this is going to be the longest part of it. This is going to take a little while. So you get a lot of oil in there. Can you guys see my pan? So there's quite a bit of oil. It's almost to the top. It's sort of just like rimmed around there. And I'm going to put it on this burner because this burner gets a little hotter. And we're going to let it cook. And this is going to take, once it gets up to temperature, it'll probably take about 10 minutes for the potatoes to get soft. And what we're looking for is a fully cooked potato. We don't want to rely on the egg process when we're cooking the tortilla itself to cook the eggs. Like, you know, when you do a lasagna and you only partially cook your lasagna noodles, and then it finishes in the oven. This, you don't want to take that chance because there's nothing worse than having a tortilla where you bite into an al dente potato. They need to be soft. Is that clear to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, sorry, I'm trying to work at the same time. You put the oil in, oh I see, you're mixing everything, getting the oil spread all around?
Yeah. So I am literally just, it's on high right now to get it up to temperature, and then once it starts going, then we're going to settle it down a little bit, and we're just going to get a gentle fry going on. We don't want to brown the onions. We don't want to brown the potatoes. We just want to cook them through. And like I said, it's almost like a poaching. My cousin has just proposed that we do a channel together, The Cooking Cousins. She's quite the chef out in Colorado. First, we have to determine whether this is a viable thing. But interestingly, there's a lot of people on Facebook watching. I see lots of high school people. Staller, good to see you. Not yet. We're going to season the potatoes after they come out because basically you would be seasoning the oil right now, and that's not necessary. So to me, I would wait until I drain the potatoes from the oil. And then, so as you can see, it's starting to sink in. I'm starting to see the oil poke through. Now what we can do while we're cooking that is everybody got their potatoes on the stove? And it's within range so that they're not gonna burn something or burn down their house. I should probably have some sort of a legal disclaimer too. I am not responsible if you burn down your house. I'm talking to you, Eric. Because you have a really nice house. Okay, so
obviously the oil is not, they're not submerged, right? You just sort of
it's
continually mixing them
ultimately, by the time they cook down, they will be pretty well submerged, but I would say 2/3 to the top of where the potatoes are. So I put in about 1.5 cups of oil. And as I said, that's a lot of oil. Think of it like it's almost like a deep frying process, but it's poaching. You're basically using the oil to poach the potatoes. And when you pull them out, you're going to drain the oil off. So you're not drinking all of that oil. And it's olive oil anyway. So olive oil, why not? You can drink it like wine, right? No? Who said that?
Danielle.
What, the Italian? The Italian says that?
The Italian says it because the Italian also likes her wine.
We should be doing this with wine. Do you guys want to do it with wine? Does anybody have wine that wants to drink? Who wants to drink? There, Robert drinks. Go figure. I think it's time for some rosé. Noah's going right out of the bottle. All right, I think it's rosé time. Now we get an opener. This one looks like it might even have some effervescence to it. I'm starting to deplete my stock. This is the one thing that I may need to really load up on before this shelter in place is over. All right, we're starting to get some movement over here, by the way. Can you guys see it and hear it? The potatoes are starting to sizzle. I'm going to turn it down a little bit because what's going to happen is, and you want to keep them moving, you're going to get browning on the edges because the pan comes up and it's shallower. So you just want to keep things moving so you get an even cook and that there's not too much browning. Oh, and back to this. Shawnee Woo. This is funny. It's like the live stream on Facebook, I didn't realize is actually a thing, and people are pretty active.
The splatter guard here if anyone has one.
That's a brilliant idea. If you have a splatter guard, use it. This will keep your stovetop from getting oily. So you can just put that over, and then that's also a good spatula rest. Driggs. What's that? If your potatoes are thicker, you're going to cook them longer. What's going to happen is there's no timer on this. We don't work with timers or measurements. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little technique to figure out how the potatoes are done. Normally, if you can jab a fork into it and it just falls apart, that's the easiest way. You can break them with your hands, just as long as it doesn't give any snap or tension. You want the potatoes to be cooked through. And like I said, make sure you keep moving them. But these are going well. So these, I can start to feel softening up a little bit. The onions are going to melt into it. Now, one of the things you could do, if you have the preference, you can cook your onions beforehand as well. You could caramelize your onions if you want darker, sweeter onions in the dish. I prefer them to cook along with the potatoes. And again, you don't have to include them at all. But now the oil is basically, as it's settled in, the oil has pretty much covered the potatoes. So if you don't see the oil bubbling up around it, here, let me see, I'll bring it over without killing it myself. But, so you can see the movement in the oil. Everybody got a shot of that?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what you're looking for. Okay. Cheers. Cent'anni. Looking good, Eric. Where's Driggs? This is for him. There you go, boo-boo. Okay, eggs. So, for the amount that I did 3 big honking potatoes. That's probably going to be around a dozen eggs. Depending on how much you did, whatever size pan you're in, you want the eggs to encumber the potatoes, but you don't want it to be overly soupy. I don't know how I can describe it other than not too loose, not too tight. So we'll show when I do it. But I'm gonna crack most of my eggs. Exactly. And look at the color of the egg. Okay, that's a nice orange yolk. And you see how the white, the albumin, has heft. You want the yolk to really stand up. You look at supermarket eggs and you see they're runny and they
So Adam, can I ask you a question?
yes, sir.
Everything I've learned is that there can sometimes be a chemical reaction between stainless or a metal bowl and egg. And so I learned early on, like years and years ago, always, from my grandmother, always mix your eggs in a glass bowl.
I've never heard that, nor have I tasted it. If that's your preference, go for it. But I've never had any issues with a metal bowl. Love to see the science on it, and certainly, I don't know. Empirically speaking, it's just not something I've experienced. When you crack your eggs, I don't know if you guys are aware of the method of taking one egg and cracking it against the other. It's kind of cool because only one egg will crack every time, and it doesn't even like go to a dominant hand, which is really interesting. All right, make sure you keep an eye on your potatoes. These are really starting to cook now.
They shouldn't brown at all.
I mean, if you prefer them browned, certainly you can go for that. But my technique, I try to keep them from browning. I keep a nice little even boil going on the oil, or a sizzle. And if you keep moving them on the sort of medium-high heat, they won't brown on you. Especially if you have enough oil in there. It takes on...
Falling apart.
They're falling apart?
Yeah,
Who's that, Danielle?
yeah.
Um,
But I Russet, that's all I had.
okay. And how thin did you slice them?
I think like what you did.
They should be okay. If they're falling apart, that means they're done. If the potato is if it can fall apart, that means it's done.
Okay.
So then you want to pull out your potato and you want to strain it and pour the oil. So get a plastic container to catch your oil or a bowl or something and pour your potatoes into your fine mesh strainer, your potato and onion mixture. And then you'll hold up and wait.
The potatoes are sticking to the non-stick pan.
They shouldn't. If you have enough oil, they shouldn't. So look. Those are loose, see? No sticking whatsoever.
Yeah, no, it's just the bottom of it to stick to the pan.
The whole thing should move. It may mean that you've got not a great nonstick pan. Take your spatula and go underneath them and just keep them moving.
That's what I've been doing, but I'll do it again.
Nicole, is it happening to you too? A little bit? Yeah, keep them moving.
I'm not using the best pan right now because my good pans right there are really too small or too big. So I'm using my cheap off.
Yeah, I mean, these not a single potato is going to stick to this pan. One, because of the amount of oil, and two, it's just constantly in motion. So I'm going to keep cracking my eggs here. Got to crack a couple eggs to make an omelet, people. My mom, she was the egg cracker. Every day, hundreds and hundreds of eggs. One-handed, she would do the old method. That's how I learned. And then I get a shell in it. If you get a shell in your egg, you literally just hunt on it, push down, and then slide it out. Okay? And I'll keep my two-handed cracks to a minimum. Sakai, are you drinking with us? And why aren't you on Zoom? This would be a good time to take another drink. Noah?
Okay. I just tasted the potatoes. They're not mushy. They're edible. They're soft. There's a little for still.
I would go. Mine aren't done yet. You want it to be Very soft all the way through. You don't want any bite to it. You don't want it to be al dente, right? So I'm going to get a second bowl that I can catch my oil in. I'm going to put it in the sink. But I'm getting close. I would say mine's another 3 or 4 minutes. It's the point right before it starts to break apart. And you might have different size pieces in there too. So some of them, you want to go for your larger pieces. Always cook to your larger pieces. Here, I'm going to put this last egg in. I'm doing a whole dozen, but I'll probably wind up making 2 tortillas out of it. Let's get the bowl out of the way. So Sarah Glicken was supposed to be here, and we were going to give her a shout out for all the heat ceramics that she hooked me up with over the years. But she's got a business that she needs to tend to. Sakai, you're drinking coffee, huh? All right. We need a fork, and I'm going to mix up my eggs. So, again, let's just look at the dark color of these. This is going to make a banging tortilla. See how dark those are? Yeah, Noah's got them. It makes all the difference in the world. And this is, I guess, a point that we can discuss. In any cooking that I do, I don't know if you guys read, back in the early 2000s, I had a blog called the Epicurean Zealot. And I actually wrote up my tortilla recipe. I called it, don't call it a frittata, because it's not a fucking frittata. It's a Tortilla Española. But one of the things I talk about is the quality of the ingredients. Every single thing that you put in your food, in your dishes, if you skimp on one thing, it takes the whole thing down. So the idea is to be thinking about, is this potato the most flavorful, best potato, or is this onion the sweetest? Is the oil that I'm using, does that impart good flavor? The salt, all the way down to the salt and the pepper. At every step in the game, I think about how, and most European cooking is all about the simplicity and the individual flavors in the food. So I highly recommend, as you cook anything, and simple dishes in particular like this, where it's 3 or 4 ingredients, you really focus on the level of quality of each ingredient. All right, I think my potatoes are probably there. So let me pull one out and I'll give you I'm going to turn off the heat because I'm pretty sure they're done. I'm going to find a big one. So can you guys see it on my counter here? I'm going to take the fork and very lightly, I'm going to push the fork and turn, and you see how it just falls apart like that? That's what you want. So now I'm going to take this off the oil. I'm going to get the wooden spatula. I've got my strainer in the sink. Make sure that there's no water in here. And I'm going to strain the oil into another bowl and isolate my potatoes. And that oil can be used for cooking other things. It's going to be super tasty and heavily flavored with onions and a little bit of a starchy potato vibe. But don't waste that oil, please. You can use it to saute veggies to make a soup. So here's what I got. My potatoes are now draining in the oil, or draining of their oil. The next step is another point of contention for the Spaniards. Everybody let me know when you get your potatoes back. I'll wait. I'll drink.
Not looking too good on the nonstick.
Yeah, you need a new nonstick, bro. I'll give you a link. You can get them at the restaurant supply place, super cheap, $20. Because look, this is how mine came out.
Yeah, that's what I would expect.
Yeah, so
If we're gonna use it again?
do you have another one?
Not nonstick, I have regular. Yeah, I'll see it.
Yeah, clean it really well because That's going to prove a problem in the next step even more than it did now.
Okay.
So we're going to, yeah. You might have to do the broil method instead of the flip method because of the nonstick. Flavarella McFlaverstein says hi, Nicole. What a guy. Okay.
Knows that name even means, by the way.
What
It's
it-
a name.
What does it mean?
Yeah. What does that mean?
I don't know. I mean, like as if
Really?
Fitz John Birkenstock wasn't enough.
Yeah, right?
Okay, so everybody, that looks good. Yeah?
Before the next phase?
Yeah, get it clean. Super clean. I'm probably going to use a different pan for the next phase because I want to do a little bit smaller. You also have to think about what your flip thing will cover. So my flip guy covers this pan, so I want to make sure that I'm covered on the flip, and it wouldn't cover this pan.
Adam, it's in there from before.
What's that?
You know the oil?
You can leave it if it's non-stick and the stick held up really well, or the non-stick held up really well. Just leave the little bit of oil that's in there. We're going to add some of this oil back into the pan, in fact. But just make sure that there's no stuck-on bits on the pan, because when you get to the point where you have to loosen, if there's anything that's stuck on the pan before, it's certainly going to be a point where it sticks again when we get to the tortilla. Okay, so I have eggs and potatoes, and onions. Now, we're going to mix it into the egg mixture. The Spaniards have differences of opinion of how long it should sit in here. We're not going to have time to let it sit for hours and hours, but some people really like that. I think it gives actually a little too much of the onion flavor to the egg by letting it sit all day. But some people swear by it, and those that don't put onions in it maybe. But I like the egginess of a tortilla española, so I'm not gonna let it sit that long, but I'm just gonna take it all and dump it into my eggs. And because I think I've got the right proportions here, and I'm gonna show you that there's a mix of egg and onion that is not all soupy egg. You see, or egg and potato. It's a pretty good balance between them like that. That's the thing that you wanna pay attention to, is your tortilla is wholly going to be the density of it is going to be determined on this balance between egg and potato. So the less egg you put into it, the more dense and potatoey it'll be. The more egg you put into it, the more omelette-y and souffle-like it will be. It's a matter of preference. I like a middle ground. I like it to have a decent amount of egg, but I like the potato to be all up in it too. So there's a balance. Some people can go more towards the omelet. Some people can go more towards the potato dense. We're going to need to season it now. So this is experience. This is the eyeball. I know for about this amount of food, I've got a pretty hefty bit of salt, and I'm going in again. And I'm not afraid of the salt. And you just have to think, you don't want it to be overly salty, but you definitely don't want a tortilla to be undersalted. But the good news is that if it is a little undersalted, you can hit it with finishing salt at the end when you serve it. There's nothing wrong with putting a little fresh Malden salt on top of a tortilla española. People actually love that. So hit your tortilla with a decent amount of salt. And mix it in, and then fresh cracked pepper. And again, it's to taste. This is every recipe that's worth its weight is telling you to do it to taste. So you got to develop that taste. You might have to make this a dozen times before you really nail in. But at this point, I understand what salt levels I want for most things based on volume. I think that's where the instinct kicks in, where it's, this is this amount of food, this is this type of food, it needs that much salt. But I probably put, if I were measuring, I probably put 1.5 teaspoons of salt into my tortilla. Okay. So, this, as I mentioned, a lot of Spaniards would let this sit for a long time. And then it starts to really just meld the flavors and soak. We don't have the time to do that. We'll turn out a fine tortilla without doing that. But if you're inclined to do that at some point and try it out, that's a good consideration and technique. All right. Yes?
Would you refrigerate it or?
No. No. No, I would just let it sit at room temperature. It's not, you can let it sit most of the day at room temperature and it would be fine.
Okay.
Okay, so the next phase, we need to take a drink of wine. Chatty butts and turn. I'm going to take some of this oil and I'm going to put it back in the pan. So I am using a smaller pan than I fried my potatoes in. I have the luxury of having a massive set. That's what she said. A massive set of pans. So I'm going to take a little measuring cup and just use that as my vehicle to coat the bottom of my pan. Just a fine little coat as such. And then I'm going to swirl it around to get it all the way to the edge. Because once we put our egg in there, it's going to come up pretty high. So you want it to go as high as your egg is going to come up. Yes.
How high should the heat be?
I would put it on medium, straight up medium. And then I'm going to put this oil aside, and when it cools down, I'm going to put it in plastic. I need to check my starter, so I'm working on tartine bread, and I just fed my starter this morning. So you see how it's all fluffy and bubbly like that? Wiggly? It was about this high when I fed it this morning. I threw out up to that much and just added flour and water to get it to there, and now this is alive. And there's no yeast in this. This is natural leavening that it over 3 days, the first rise of this, it just picked up spores in the air and it naturally leavens. And now this is a week into every day I feed it and it grows all bubbly. It's alive.
Will you share, Adam?
Share what?
Your starter. I need some.
Yeah, I could do that. Who asked that?
Me.
Oh, you need me to mail it to you?
Yes.
And this is the bread that it'll make. It makes
I
this.
mean, it looks phenomenal. I honestly will pay you to mail me some starter.
Once it gets going, I'll be happy to share. Okay, so you want your pan to get hot before you put your egg in there, but not that hot. So medium to low flame. And then we're going to take our eggs and go right in. So is everybody ready? You have your pan ready, a nice sheen of oil on it. And then you're going to take your eggs. Now, I'm going to switch from my fork to my spatula. So, a rubber spatula so that I can just scrape things out. I'm going to, a couple times I'm going to swirl this just to make sure that I got good coverage. And then in I go. And we're making tortilla. So, I'm putting every last drop. And mine doesn't come quite to the top, so that's good. It'll give me a little extra room. You'll see the oil will move itself up, and it'll ultimately get distributed. And then I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit to about a medium temperature. So can you guys see what I have going on there? Or you want me to bring it over? So this is what it looks like right now. Under the light, not under the light. Okay? And now we're going to let it cook. So that'll cook for a while. And what's happening is, if you've got nice even heat, and Noah, this is where it's, you know, it's going to be a potential issue for sticking, because this is where it sticks. This is the place where if it was not loose, before, this is where the egg will adhere a lot more than the potato. So what you're going to look for is you're going to start to see bubbling around the sides. And it's going to start to, the egg will start to flap a little bit around the sides. And that's a good sign. And it'll take a little bit. Let's see what's going on over here. Do I like my Headley and Bennett apron? K-Maz. I like it so much that I have 4 of them. We did a partnership with them, with the James Beard Foundation, with Feasley at South by Southwest, and there were some extras left over, and they let me have them. Headley and Bennett was a sponsor, so I actually have a wall around here that I've hung 3 of these on display because, as you know, they're kind of spendy and gorgeous. But yes, love my Headley and Bennett apron. Again, not sponsored by Headley and Bennett, though you're welcome to throw me some money. All right, guys, so I already see, and this is how you can gauge how it's cooking. If you start to see it cook on one side more than the other, you want to kind of spin it around and make sure that all sides are getting even cooking. So you'll see the sides are doing like this, and if there's one side that starts to get more opaque than the others, then just move it around on your flame so that you're getting it evenly distributed. And ultimately what's going to happen is the structure is going to form up and it's going to start to solidify in the middle, and you'll be able to take your rubber spatula and move it around the side of it and start to check on the browning. So, you know, this has a ways to go, but I can see as it's loose, and you know, you want it to be loose. And if there's any pent-up oil on the top, you can pull it aside. You can pull the egg up a little bit, and it'll send the oil down to the bottom, which is where you want that oil to be. So this is going really well. I'm going to turn it down. So you want to make sure that it doesn't cook too fast, because what's going to happen is you're going to get your crust on the outside, and you want a nice dark crust, but you also want the inside to cook up fairly well before you flip it. Otherwise, it's going to be a complete mess when you flip it. So at this point, if you've got a nice sizzle going, here, I'll show you. Got a nice sizzle going. You can see around the edges right here that it's cooking well. You want to just get that going at a low boil. Danielle, you look like you got this under control.
Yeah, it's done.
It's done?
It's potatoes and eggs. I never knew that that's what it is. It's my mother used to make this all the time.
Yeah, the Italian's a little different, but... So yours is done already?
No, I mean, it's cooking. It's not, you know, it's that I have to turn it probably pretty soon.
All right, well, we're going to do the flip together. That's the important part. That.
So I lowered it.
Okay. I'm starting to get some good browning in here, actually. I'm going to turn it down even a little more, because let me see if I can show you the browning I'm getting without completely ruining this. Can you see the brown right there? Like the little edge of that? So this is coming along pretty quick, and it's still pretty loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this and I'm going to cover it so that it helps it to cook a little bit on the top, that the meat of it, because mine's pretty thick, it's deep and it's wide. So I'm going to give it a little help by putting a cover over it that will help the middle to cook a little bit more and slow down the browning on the outside. So if that happens to you, that's a technique that will work. And I'm going to have some more wine. What time is it?
Well, it is 12 o'clock in the East Coast.
It's 11 o'clock here. That's perfectly fine. Robert's already 3 in.
No, it's 11.
Well, it's 12 on the East Coast.
No, it's not. It's 12.
It's 2 o'clock on the East Coast.
Eating after
It's
dinner.
after.
I see. I see.
It's not good.
So how's everybody's omelet looking, or their tortilla looking?
Gorgeous.
Yeah? Is it getting nice and brown on the sides? And Noah, are you having any issues with loosening the sides of it?
No, so far so good.
Oh, good, good.
It's supposed to be runny, but I put something over it like you suggested. And put
Cool.
it down.
Cool. There she is.
Actually, the sides are very brown now that I just checked it.
Turn it down, turn it down. Pull it off the heat a little bit. My cooking idol is now on watching me, Becky Reams. She's the best. If you guys want, she does cooking demos too, live on Facebook. Or she records them. I don't know if she's doing them live, but she should do them live because she's the best out there. Where's my spatula? So we're just going to keep at this. Can you guys see the brown?
Yeah, mine's about the same.
Okay, that's good. That's where you want it to be. The issue for me right now is this one is so big that if I try to flip it right now, it's going to go all over the place. So I'm just going to give it a little bit more time with a cover on it to solidify in the middle a little bit. If yours is cooking faster, if yours is thinner, then you can take it off the heat if it's starting to get too brown and wait for me. Because I think most of you guys, Becky just said live is terrifying. Not for you, kid. You are as good as they get. And she cooks banging food. And breakfast stuff, forget about it. Everybody write down Becky Reams. Go follow her on Facebook if you like to cook. If you don't, then why are you here?
Was Becky the one who did my birthday?
Becky is the one who did your birthday.
She's amazing.
She is. That's Danielle. You did her birthday, Becky.
Diamond salt, Adam? What about kosher?
It is kosher.
Oh, okay, great, yeah.
I keep many boxes of this in my house all the time. And then I keep this filled all the time. Becky says hi, Danielle.
And how, like, lucky are we looking or not runny on the top before we flip?
It's gonna be pretty runny. You can't avoid that. It's not gonna cook all the way through. But you wanna kinda get somewhat set so that when you do the flip, I mean, look how loose mine is still, but it's getting close. Because I know the bottom is done, and it's more about the bottom, quite honestly. You don't want the bottom to go to a bad place. So that's the key here is, as long as your bottom looks okay, you can keep cooking on the top. I'm gonna need gloves for this because it's all gonna get hot. And I am gonna use the bigger pan. What I'm gonna do is, once I flip it, because mine's so big, I'm gonna push it off into the bigger pan. So the technique is this. I'll show you on a cutting board. What you're gonna do is, you've got your pan with your potatoes in it, okay? You take your flat surface, you put it over it. If you need a glove, because the heat goes through, then put on a glove. And you take it with one hand on top, one hand here, and you flip it over like that, right? And then, this should come loose, okay? There should be an upside down omelet here. You're gonna flip this around, and with your spatula, you're gonna push it back into the pan. Everybody clear on that? Let me show you again. Okay. Pan with potatoes. I'm gonna do it live, but some of you might be ready to do it now. Pan with potatoes, flat surface of some sort that will catch the thing and let it slide. Okay? One hand on the thing, one hand on the flat thing, one hand on your pan, right? You lift them both, you flip it over, this comes loose, and then spin this guy around and push the omelet back into the pan, and that's how you flip it. It may get messy. Some of the egg might get all over the place. It's not something to be concerned about. Make a little bit of a mess. Just try to get it back into the pan in the best shape possible. I think I'm going to do it now. And maybe I'll use the cutting board because it is bigger and cooler. All right, so here's my potatoes. Okay. And I'm going to do it. I have to make some surface room. All right, you guys ready? This is the famous flip. So I can handle the heat of this and I can handle the heat of that. So again, could big mess. I'm going to take it, I'm going to flip it, I'm going to pull it off, okay? And then I might go right back into that pan. And then I'm going to slide the whole thing back into the pan. Okay? And then make sure you tuck the edges back in. So this is what you're left with. And you tuck your edges back in if anything flipped out. And then go right back on the heat and keep cooking.
So Adam, is this still too runny?
Hold on. Let me just get this going. Okay. And you see it left a little egg residue on the cutting board. All right, you want to show me?
Oh yeah. Here. It seems like it's still pretty damn runny.
Yeah, you might cover it a little bit. And just keep it on low heat and cover it for a sec. You can pop it in the oven for a sec if it's lagging behind. All valid methods. What I just did was pretty baller because I did it into the same pan, if I do say so myself. And this is what you wind up with. You guys see that? Does everybody have that?
Yes.
Nick, yeah, good job.
What should the heat be on now, the temperature?
Same medium. And what I do is I take the spatula and I try to tuck the edges under of the flip just so that it doesn't splay out because it wants to naturally splay out. And now you're just going to cook it till it's done and you made a Tortilla Española. So what I'm going to prepare now is my cooling rack. Cooling rack on a sheet pan. It's probably the best way. It keeps it nice and clean. And then these can go in the sink. My oil for future use, I'm going to put in plastic. And then everybody let me know when you catch up.
I have a question.
Yes?
Why do you put it on the cooling rack and not just a plate?
Because you want to avoid moisture building up on the bottom of it, which will make it soggy. So if you put it right on the plate, if you're planning on serving it right away, here's the thing. The tortilla can be eaten hot, it can be eaten room temperature, it can be eaten cold, it can be eaten the day of, or up to a week later. I like it fresh and warm. So I'll let it cool down on here, and then sometime later this afternoon, I will probably eat it. I can taste it now, and it would be fine and delicious. Hey, come say hi. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Little Zolot. Okay, so this is just about done. This is the kind of thing like when you're cooking meat. You can kind of feel it, and you can see that it's not runny anymore. It's not jiggly. The egg is cooked all the way through. You don't want to overcook it, but you really can't. You can't ruin it that much at this point too. But you basically want it to keep going until it's solid. Becky said it's perfect. Thank you. Rachel Ward, good to see you. I ain't saying the Di Giovanni because that's a mouthful. Okay, so you guys look at the movement of that. To me, it's pretty well set. I'm confident that when I pull this off, it's going to be fine. I'm going to just give it like another minute or two. And then I'm going to put it out on the cooling rack. Now, traditionally, you can serve a tortilla española as it is. As I said, you can put a little sea salt on it. Often served as a tapas, appetizers cut up in pieces. And a lot of people will put it like an aioli with it. And it's ridiculous with an aioli. I like to make a garlic aioli with a little mustard. And you put that on the side, and then people will spread a little aioli on it as they see fit. So I'm going to plate this by just popping it out. And there it is. I can pull it out of here so you can see the bottom has the same sort of doneness. Well, you can't see because it's going to fall off and there's already a thing on there. But this is what it looks like on the bottom as well. It's a, you know, as I said, I like mine thick. But I would love to see yours and see how it turned out. Fantastic. Oh, and I like the use of the oven rack. Good job, Becca. Noah, you're still waiting on yours. Nug, good job. I can't see your lighting is a little off.
To make a nice salad to go with it.
Oh, you made a salad while you were... That's fantastic.
Working too. Did you say he was working too?
And he's working. The guy's a multitasker. He's also a... Hey, Betaloo! What's up, buddy?
So I have a question again.
Yes.
So I didn't cook, I don't know if you can see, I think I overcooked the top, so I didn't cook it that much on the bottom.
Yeah. I would still cook it on the bottom, even if you cooked it a little bit too much on the top. You want to have that browning on both sides. So even if you overcooked it on the top, make sure you get the brown on the bottom. And then what you can do is you can actually flip it over and use the bottom side as your top side if the top's too dark. That's a cheat.
I'm making my next one from the leftover.
Oh, you have a second one going.
Yeah.
So this is it. I guess I'll cut it open so you can see what it looks like, even though I would probably let it cool and eat it later. I do want to give you the completed product. So I'm going to cut into this. And then I'm going to get a plate. So we can see how she looks in the middle. It's cooked all the way through. And you can see the layers of the potatoes in there. And that's what you guys should have. See the chunks of the potatoes with the egg mixed in, a good ratio. This is the kind of ratio I like. It's not too eggy. Sometimes you'll see them and it'll look like an omelet. And this is not an omelet. It's not a frittata. It's not a souffle. It's a tortilla española. So that's the finished product. Great.
What are we making tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.?
Maybe not tomorrow morning, but soon, in the next couple of days, I had a request. My friend in LA, Kelly Valentine, her husband loves cacio e pepe. You guys know cacio e pepe?
I don't know him.
No, but what are the ingredients that we need?
I'll send it out, but the ingredients would be pecorino, parmesan, pasta, and pepper. Pecorino, parmesan, pasta, and pepper. And those are all the ingredients to make the best pasta in Rome. So next time we'll do that. Do you guys, honestly, do you like this, and is this something that you want to do again?
Yeah.
Like it, I would prefer morning time personally.
You prefer it in the afternoon?
It's just hard because of work, right? I 8 and 8 in the
I
morning.
feel you. We can experiment with different times. Any questions? Anybody actually taste it? You guys want to taste some? I hate when cooking shows do that and they taste. I'm gonna put a little finishing sea salt on it, a little Malden salt, because that's how I roll. We're cooking shows and they're like,
And here you go, about to do that.
yeah. It is. I mean, it's really fucking good. It's delicious. It's on point. Like I said, I prefer it at room temperature. I don't like it as hot, but it's still really damn good.
It's so good, Zolot.
Rock star. So break this. This is perfect for potlucks and to put out at a dinner party when you're cooking other stuff. Make it a day in advance. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up. Everybody, no questions. Everybody good?
No, delicious.
It came out good. Simple, fast, easy. You guys are the best.
Centane.
Centani, I hope everybody comes back for the next one. I'm going to do cacio e pepe, and we'll make hand-make pasta when we do it. So we're going to hand-make pasta and then make the cacio e pepe sauce.
We have a pasta from.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Zolot.
Peace out. Oh, I didn't record it. I should have recorded it.
Thank you so much. I took lots of notes.
Right on. Bye, guys.
I don't know how to hang up.
Oh, that's just magic.
See you, Facebook.